But and one of the quotes that we like to say, adding more animal products to your diet is easy. Adding more plants can be a challenge. Everyone knows challenge leads to growth. Growth leads to success. So we want you to be challenged. In every aspect of our life, we embrace challenge, right? You don't go to school to not be challenged. You maybe don't start a more challenging job to not be challenged. You don't exercise and go to the gym to not challenge yourself. These things do kind of break it down a little bit, but then the idea is to repair and become stronger. The idea is to learn something new and become more wise and knowledgeable. The same is true with your gut. The goal is to eat a larger variety of foods to then get a larger variety of gut microbes and to help with that structure, function, population. So this is again to reiterate as we kind of move into restoring the gut and diving deeper into that the idea that we coined and that we do in our practice is reverse elimination diet because so many come to us where they're starting at a low point. They're already starting at a long-term elimination diet, so they're starting with less. And our goal is to say we want to give you more. We want to give you as many plants. And even if you do eat some animals, great. But what does that look like? Why does that look like? And continue to increase your tolerance to plants and a variety of really high quality and healthy foods. Whereas you see the elimination diet, which can be useful in some small and very, I would say, customized and overseen instances. You're starting with more and ending with less. The trouble is people just kind of stay with the less and stay a little bit too long. And that is really inhibiting and destroying your gut population over time, which is exactly what we don't want to happen. So this goes into why plants, and we have tons of studies, but just some highlights of just really well done studies and all different types, right? Whether it is epidemiological studies or meta-analyses or looking at animal studies or randomized control trials. But some of the really cool things to pop out over the last 15 years of gut research is like eating 30 or more plants per week, understanding the benefits of fermented foods. There was a time where some doctors were like, fermented foods aren't good for you because they're very acidic and
Salty.
salty and too salty, and really almost discrediting fermented foods that humans have been eating for thousands and thousands of years. And so now there's really great data to show no fermented foods are not just good, they're we would say essential
Yeah.
in many cases of really ensuring you're eating those fermented foods on a regular basis, whatever that looks like for you.
Especially on a plant-based diet, because we do tend to see, people might feel better eliminating dairy, but then where are you getting bacteria in your food? So yes, you do get bacteria in your plants. They live in the skin, in the seeds, in the flesh of the plants, but the concentration and abundance might not be there. So especially if you are on a plant-based diet, fermented foods are vital. So it's so important to be eating them. And now we're being able to quantify them 4 to 6 servings a day.
Yeah, and another great, I mean, great studies being done on just eating more plants. So whether you're 100% plant-based or 80% or even 65%, whatever that looks like, of just eating more plants where you're decreasing the risk of disease. And the reason why you're decreasing risk of disease is because you're enhancing the health of your gut microbiome. And literally for every 10 grams of fiber, we're seeing all-cause mortality decrease by 10%. So for every 10, you're getting 10, right? And so that is pretty amazing when we're looking at the data and we're looking across multiple studies over multiple years and we're looking at thousands and thousands of studies. And really, I do want to touch on animals because I want us to understand what we're getting and what we're not getting in animals. And so really there's four aspects when it comes to eating animals for that we want our patients to understand, especially if you're on more of a Mediterranean diet, you're including animals in your daily routine, which is bioaccumulation and understanding that animals are there to bioaccumulate. And yes, they can bioaccumulate things like amino acids and other peptides and vitamins and minerals, microbes and viruses, but they can also accumulate not so good microbes and bacteriophages, viruses, heavy metals, PCBs, PFAS, dioxins, tumors, endotoxins, right? The list can go on even with that. And especially as we get into factory farmed animals, which essentially is what a majority of Americans and those in first world countries are consuming, the health of the animal needs to be really touched on and going, is the animal you're eating healthy? Because if the animal you're eating is being abused, has tumors, their microbiome is completely in dysbiosis, they're lacking that structure, function, population. Are you going to be healthy from eating that animal? Probably
Mhm.
not. This also speaks to environmental factors in that animal, where there's a reason why 95% of our dioxin exposure, which is a heavy carcinogen, comes from animals. We're getting dioxin exposure from animals because we're usually housing animals in industrialized areas, in areas that are a little bit more urban, especially nowadays, in areas where there's runoff, in parts of the, let's say, city or county where no one really wants that land, either because of industry, we're outsourcing to other countries like India and South America and China, where there's less regulation, there's a lot of corruption. The list can go on and on. So we need to be aware of this. We also need to understand, I'd love to parallel this, when you kill a broccoli and you kill a chicken, leave them in your room. Which one would you want in your room, right? There's going to be a very different decomposition process in those two living things, right? So the broccoli, yes, it'll decompose, but I guarantee it's not going to smell as bad as the chicken decomposing in your room or in your kitchen, right? That's why we refrigerate. So it's important to understand, when did that chicken die, right? When did that person kill the chicken? Because if you're the average American eating an average chicken, it has probably died a month ago. And it happened maybe in a farm outside of the country. It was then packaged, it was then shipped, it was then processed, it was then repackaged. It was maybe shipped to, likely, if you're in the United States, a fast food restaurant where it was kept frozen, then cooked, then you're eating it. So by all that time that's gone, you're lucky if it's a month. And what is happening to that meat over time is it's decomposing. The microbes are still active when frozen. It's only once you burn them and cook them, the microbes are not active. But I want to highlight right there on the screen, endotoxins. The endotoxins are active. So if that was a sick chicken, if that chicken was not kept in the best environment, even across this food chain, the supply chain, we are going to see issues of inflammation. We are going to see that disease spiral cascade, and then you're not healing with every meal, right? It's the opposite of heal with each meal. So I wanted to touch on these factors that a lot of people don't think about when they're eating animals.
And we have a lot of people out there just saying macros, 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 right? Just eat your protein, eat your amino acids. And yes, those things can matter, especially depending on your body composition goals and your long-term health goals. But you always want to beg the question, what's in your food's food? What's in your food's water? What was in the environment of your food? And that's both with plants and with animals. So if you can't answer those questions, you probably want to dig a little bit deeper and say, what is the quality of this food or the substance that I am then ingesting, and that is going to interact with my whole gut ecosystem and that whole diverse.
And yeah, and then I'll add, I mean, I eventually want to expand this a little bit more, but understanding in the same way we are obtaining microbes from our mother, right? When we're drinking mother's milk, when we're infants, we're obtaining microbes from who we cohabitate with, including the food we eat. The food we eat is giving us microbes. The food we eat is giving us DNA. You are going to obtain DNA as well as microbes from the animals you're eating. It is a huge, huge impact on your microbiome. That is what we teach in our practice and our protocols and our program.
And we actually ran into a friend a few weeks ago who told us she usually eats all organic and she was traveling and she ran out of food. She was at the airport, so she got a chicken wrap from somewhere. And she said, that gave me the worst UTI that I have had in years. She subsequently had to take antibiotics and her gut was off ever since. So it really does matter where did that food come from? Who was handling the food? What conditions was that food kept in? Because
Mhm.
one little degree off and that can have that cascading effect in your gut.
And this is where we go into plant-based nutrients. That's why, I mean, we've heavily studied this, and many of you, I think, are in the know of this, where plants, the animals are getting their nutrients from plants. And yes, you have to be a little bit more aware and diligent, but all of the main nutrients you can obtain from plants or complementing with some supplements. When it comes to B12, anybody, even if you're eating animals or not, you should be taking B12 just because B12 is coming from our microbes. And a healthy gut microbiome can produce B12. We just don't know how much. And really, we're not on the farm, on a regenerative farm every day in touch with the soil, inhaling the soil to be getting those B12 producing microbes that much. We're sitting here at a desk talking on the computer instead of out in the soil. And so we recommend everyone supplement with B12. But